So let's see here. All right, here we go.
You are listening to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello and welcome to the Fouché Way radio show, live every Thursday at 1 o'clock p.m., a show sponsored by a nonprofit organization called Canine Hope for Improvement Program, where we hope to improve the quality of our dogs' lives by moving towards a no-kill society. The number here is 818-602-4929. If you have a question about dogs you would like to be answered, call 323-637-7306, and I will answer that. We have three people on the line today, but first I'd like to respond to an email that I received last night, and I'd like for our listeners to hear this. It says, "Hi, Brandon. I emailed you back in April about our dog, and you ended up speaking with my boyfriend. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pay for the evaluation or the training, so we didn't end up bringing him to you. On Sunday, he bit our neighbor, and so we have decided that we no longer will keep him. We absolutely love him, and our hearts are breaking, but we've lost trust in him and feel strongly that he won't change. I was wondering if you accept owner-surrender dogs, or if you know of a rescue who might take him. We really don't want to have to put him down." Now, this really bothers me. I mean, this radio show is a non-profit radio show, Canine Hope for Improvement Program, and I've never spoke about this before, but on my website, the non-profit part, there's a donation button. I want our listeners to use that. And that donation button is for people like this who feel that they don't have the money and they need help. I want to be able to give them that help. That money is for those types of people. And if this is an issue, I want to know about this. And so that brings me to my first caller, which is Maya. And I want to know, Maya, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I want to ask you, seriously, I mean, was that an issue with you when you came to me? Did you think about that? And what did you think that you were going to get? Because, you know, I want people to understand that when you come to me, I'm going to spend as much time talking to you as I can, hours. I'm going to explain things over and over again. I'm going to demonstrate things with you so that you can get it right. And then after you finish, I'm going to beg you to call me over and over to make sure that you're on the right track with this, because it's easy to slip. This is a new way of looking at things. That's why we're calling it the Fouché Way right now. This is a new way of looking at it. And I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm just going to come, pay my money, and that's it, and I'm going to be hanging. And so I want our listeners to know, did you feel like that, and what was your experience here, Maya?
It was definitely a lot of money for me, but fortunately I had someone to split it with me. But I feel like you're so accommodating with people's budgets, and I feel like you give so much time and so much energy that after the evaluation, Adelaide, who's my dog, was completely a different dog, but you were there for me to call at any moment. Like, I felt bad for being so dominant over her, and so I called you instead of like going backwards in the training. I called you to talk me through it, and that was worth every penny to have you just be someone that's available to us.
Okay, that's good. I want to hear that because, this money is an issue, but I mean, it's really not that much money when we're talking about $300 to $400 or $500, depending on the problem of the dog, to actually come in and get some results instantly and something that you can take away and you can continue and become successful with your dog. And so even though I got this email, hearing you say that, it makes me feel good that we are moving in the right direction. So that's great. And so now, the good part, Adelaide, tell us about Adelaide. What happened? How did you come to find me? Tell our listeners the story.
Well, I got Adelaide we rescued Adelaide. We actually went there to rescue a different dog that was going to be put down, and we rescued Adelaide because the dog that we were going there to get was already rescued, and she was in critical condition because she was very sick. So we rescued her, and we were nursing her back to health, and her personality was kind of subdued just because she was so sick. Mm-hmm. And then as she got better, it became clear that she has a lot of leash aggression, I think. She just is very aggressive towards other dogs on our walks, and cats and strollers and squirrels and stuff like that, and it was incredibly difficult to walk her. So I took her to the dog man class out in downtown, like South Central.
Yeah, I know that class. It's a good class. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was great, but I clearly didn't have control over Adelaide, and about 6 people there told me to call you. Mm-hmm. So I did, and you were very accommodating. You got me in immediately, and I left Addie with you overnight, and when I picked her up, it was like a different dog.
Good. I mean, Adelaide was an interesting case because, you know, I always talk about the different types of aggression. There's fear aggression, dominance aggression, subdominance aggression. Some dogs are multi-layered, you know, and if you're looking at a dog and you see aggression, and we just look at it as this big ball of aggression, without breaking it down properly into parts, it just seems so overwhelming that we can't possibly be able to look at them and say, you know what, maybe this is just leash aggression, or maybe she just wants to play. It's very difficult when a dog is multi-layered. And so with you, that made you feel comfortable, you had to see her with other dogs. Is that correct?
Yeah. Definitely seeing her with other dogs made me, I mean, she's not 100% perfect now. Mm-hmm. Like, she has her walks that are not as good. Mm-hmm. But having seen the way that she can be mm-hmm. with you and then with me when I was with you gives me a lot more confidence to continue with the process. And the process, it doesn't take that long. Like, you see the results immediately.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's very interesting because dealing with dogs, you have to deal with the personality of the dog and the person. And your personality, the connection that you had with that dog was that you rescued her from being destroyed. And so you had a relationship that was based on just love. So it's kind of difficult for you to kind of switch your thought to do something now that's going to show her that you're in charge, right?
Tell
us about that.
The hardest part. I mean, your assignment was to go home and kind of chase her around and basically go home and like reassign our roles within my house, which used to be she was my baby, she was my friend, she could do whatever she wanted, and that's kind of what I thought it was like to have a dog. But mm-hmm. She's the kind of dog that'll kind of just take as much as that you'll give and then some. Mm-hmm. And it was hard for me, like seeing her kind of like cower back and trying to see me as a dominant was really hard, and I felt really guilty. But I see such a difference in her mm-hmm. when we walk, and she is so much more relaxed. Like, she needed those boundaries, and she needed a place that wasn't the dominant spot. Mm-hmm. And she's just so much like, her ears are down, and she doesn't do a lot of like the anxiety things that she used to do, like ripping things up and stuff like that. She's just overall so much more relaxed now because I gave her a role, I gave her a place, and I took my place. And
you know, you said a very important thing that I want our listeners to hear you say again. You said your dog seemed very relaxed. I mean, this is a thing that we're not expecting to hear. We think that our dogs are going to be in some way depressed, or it's going to cause them to become even more excited or something like that. And you're seeing the exact opposite. You're seeing a dog that's saying, I finally understand what you want from me. Am I hearing that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think I misunderstood her excitement, like when I came home and stuff like that, for happiness, and that's how she's supposed to be. But I think that wasn't actually a healthy state for her to maintain. Mm-hmm. But now she's just so much more relaxed. She's great.
Good. And your walks, you're feeling confident now?
Yeah. They're not they're not perfect. She still needs to be socialized a lot because I can't give it to her in my apartment. I just have her.
Right.
But she walks behind me now. She's not pulling me. I don't use the choke chain anymore, which she pulled so much that she was getting all red and raw on her neck. But I don't use that anymore because she doesn't really pull me.
That's great. And another thing is, when you came in, you were like, look, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do with this dog, and she's just kind of driving me crazy. And what I want you to tell our listeners is they are having these same kind of problems with their dog. There are people that are going right to the shelter just like you, and we want to encourage people that to go to the shelter, to get these dogs, to go to rescue organizations, to adopt them, and that there is help that you can get to help with these kind of problems. So I want you to tell them that, yes, it may be difficult, but the difficult part is actually you accepting that you have to change for this dog.
Yeah, and that was really hard for me. I really want to, get down on the floor with her and love her and, mushy her all up. But right now where our relationship is, I can't do that. But I know that the process happens so fast if you put the energy into it that I know that there will be a time where, we will have our roles established and I'll be able to have that kind of relationship with her again.
And you see that very quickly, though, right?
Yeah, it's very quick. If I'd come in and you said this will take like 6 to 8 months or, weeks to see differences, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it. But because it was so immediate, it was easier to stick with the routine you gave me.
And that's good to hear because, our dogs don't have much time. I mean, there are dogs dying right now because people don't have adequate information about what to do with specific things. And it's really going to take a change in your relationship to make this happen. And by you looking at it a different way, you can see these changes so quickly that it makes you want to stick with it. And because you feel that way, you can see where your dog is saying, hey, I understand this for the first time. I'm going to help you to help me to help myself. It kind of feels like that, right?
Yeah. She was looking at me like the way she looked at me was like, tell me what you want me to do. Like, I need you to tell me type of thing.
That's good.
I never knew what to say to her, and now I do.
That's so good to hear. And I hope our listeners are understanding that you are new to rescue, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is your friend. Tell us about that. Your friend came over, and how did that happen?
Yeah, my neighbor is very active in the dog rescue scene, and she had just heard about, she goes to the shelter a lot to, save dogs and find foster people for them and stuff like that, and she found this one dog, and that's why we were there. Also, my boyfriend goes on tour a lot, and I felt lonely, so I decided I would foster a dog. But it's definitely a commitment. I've never owned a dog on my own before.
Okay. Well, this is great. I think this is a great story, and I want you to know that I am here for you, and I do mean it when I say call me to let me know what's going on. And I want our listeners to understand, too, this dog has only been with me a couple of hours. Okay? And so when you say she's not perfect, I mean, that's understandable. I mean, how old is the dog?
She's about a year and a half.
She's a year and a half. So she's had all of that time to become what she was before you came to me. She spent a couple of hours with me. We have a way to go, but it's really, really not that far, And so I want you to continue to bring her to daycare whenever you have a chance, so that we can continue to work on those issues that will help you to become a better leader. Okay?
Yeah, I will definitely. I mean, because it doesn't seem so far away, the end is definitely in sight. Right. So.
And you've been looking at those videos?
Yes, I have those videos. I love them. It's so great to watch her with the other dogs. I just would never have seen that on my own.
Right, and I want to tell you about that. See, when she's with those other dogs and they're putting that pressure on her, and this is something that our listeners must understand. Nature intended for dogs to have a certain amount of pressure on them. This is where hierarchy comes from. And so if we adopt a dog and we don't practice the way nature tells us, and we practice a lot of positive reinforcement, and we practice a lot of love and affection and domestication, then our dogs become confused because you're not controlling them emotionally. And so when you see these videos, you'll see the dogs putting pressure. And when I say pressure, I mean just coming into her personal space all around her, making her go into a submissive state, and then coming out of that without anything bad happening to them. So they're leaving on a positive note. And this happens over and over again. You've got alpha dogs, subordinate dogs, submissive dogs, dogs that are multi-layered in their personality that are coming up to check her out. This is so important for her to learn how to communicate that when you see these videos, it seems like, wow, you mean my dog can do that? But we're not understanding the language. And soon we'll start talking about those videos so that you can understand exactly what you're looking at. Because we normally say, oh, wow, we see two dogs together and they're just playing and they're having a great time. But they're really not playing in the traditional way that the human thinks. They're trying to determine who is more dominant than the other without actually fighting. And when I say dominant, I mean assertive in their behavior so that they know where they fit in to this pack. This is so important for dogs. And I think we really need to start talking about looking at the things that we're seeing on these videos. And we've never done that before, but I want to start doing that. So I'm so happy that you're happy, Maya, and that you're moving forward. And please keep up the good work and keep her coming, okay?
Yeah, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Our next guest is Jeff Campbell. Now, Jeff is no stranger to my business and what I'm trying to do as far as helping people. And, Jeff, are you there?
I am here.
I want you to tell our listeners something about you and who you are and how you came to meet me, Jeff. Can you do that?
Well, I have I've been in the dog world since the mid-'90s and started training in Phoenix and brought my training out here and actually worked on a TV show for 2 years training a bulldog and have just loved every minute of it. Obviously, dogs are an amazing part of my life, so much so that we lost, my wife and I, when we first got together, I had 2 dogs. And she had a dog, and through the process of years, I lost the 2 that I brought into the relationship, the latest being about a year ago.
What kind of dogs were there, Jeff?
The one that we just lost a year ago was a yellow lab. His name was Yukon, big boy, 105 pounds.
Wow. Just
typical kind of baby Huey, kind of dopey and lovable, and, as a lab should be. Yeah. The first one that I got was a Malamute German Shepherd wolf mix. We think she was a low-content wolf hybrid that I got out of the West LA shelter. I was the 5th person to rescue her in a month. 4 other people got her, brought her back, said, oh, she's crazy. She jumps the fence. She chases a cat. She's running down the street. She's just a lunatic.
It's being a dog.
And so I took her out in the temperament yard, and there was just something that clicked. I was like, yep, you're coming home with me. So she was with me for another 13-plus years. She lived to be almost 16, which was amazing for a dog that size. So when we lost our lab about a year ago, Janie's still with us. She's a lab shepherd mix. She's 9 now. So she was the only one that we had left, and she was definitely my wife's dog.
Oh, really? What do you mean by that? How's that?
She raised her from the time she was a puppy, and she's very attached to my wife. If it was, if she had her druthers of who she wanted to hang out with, be my wife. But we're working on that. But so it was, I'm a stay-at-home dad now, so I'm kind of out of the dog world.
How long,
so to speak, or at least the commercial dog world.
How long has that been?
What's that?
How long? A couple of years?
I've been out, my son's 2, just over 2, so I've been staying home with him, and then I work a night job, 3 or 4 nights a week, and so, I'd come home at night and my buddies would come and greet me, and then, Janie would go back and hang out with Mom and protect her in bed, and, Yukon would hang out with me, and when I lost him, there was a big hole in my life.
Sure.
And so we were talking about obviously bringing another dog into the house, but it had to be special now that we've got a 2-year-old. And we've obviously, I'm a fan of rescues, and that's how I got Makui. Yukon came to me through the people that I initially started training with. He was one of the puppies that they had, and so I haven't paid for a dog in years, and I think you definitely have to go out because there's such amazing dogs out through the rescues and
that's right.
And shelters and whatnot. So we started looking. We contacted rescue organizations. We had decided that we wanted to get a pit. The articles, the nanny dog, all those great temperament things that people, kind of forget about that, Petey of the Little Rascals was a pit bull.
Right.
And so they've got such a bad rap over the course of the last few years, that we definitely wanted to see what we could do to kind of help the breed. And so we had looked at a bunch, and, we were looking for older dogs, 1 year to 2 years. And we went to an event that a good friend of mine, Rebecca Corey, she's a stand-up comic, and she's a huge pit bull activist. And she had an event over at the Improv called Stand Up for Pits. So we showed up there, and there's all this rescue group, Angel City Pit Bulls. And we're standing there, and a friend of mine who was doing foster work with them, she says, "I got your puppy over here." And I was like, "I don't want a puppy." She's like, "No, I have your puppy over here." I was like, "I've trained puppies. I don't want to do housebreaking with a 2-year-old. I can't do this. I don't want to do it." And
I'm glad we didn't have you on the last show when we were talking about puppies breaking puppies.
It's a whole other realm. So it just brings a whole lot more into the dynamic. So
right.
Sure enough, we walked back there. She says, "I pulled him out of the South Central shelter this morning." And there's this 16-week-old pit, maybe French bulldog. He's got the Frenchy ears and white blaze on his chest and white socks, and just looking at me like, "Hey, Dad," like he knew he was coming home.
Right.
And everybody from Angel City was giving me grief because they said I didn't put the puppy down the entire time because I didn't want anybody else to adopt him. So
and wait, we gotta let people know, what color is this dog?
He's black.
And that's a very difficult dog to get adopted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
And so, he's 23 pounds. Went over to see him at my friend's house. She's the one who pulled him out of the shelter the following day, and she's got a little boy who's 3. I went out in the backyard, and there's 2 or 3 of them running around, and her boy's back there running, and there's the puppy just walking behind him, not chasing him. And I was like, wow, he looks like he's really good, with kids. And that, at the end of the day, I didn't care what dog it was, that was the number one criteria, was he had to be good with my son.
Right.
And so we brought him home the first day, and to this day, we brought him home first part of October. To this day, has never jumped, has never, I trust him explicitly with my son.
Right.
So that was always the thing that we clung to. I was like, yep, he's staying. So we started off to do a foster to adopt, and that came through very quickly. And, when we got him, he came out of the shelter. He had Giardia and Coxie and all these other things that, we had to get treated.
Nice.
And then about a week before we finalized the adoption, we found out that he had an autoimmune disease called masticatory muscle myositis. And essentially what it is his immune system was attacking his jaws like they were a foreign body. And so left untreated, basically what happens is the entire jaw just deteriorates.
Oh, my gosh.
So at 5 months old, he got put on massive doses of immune-suppressing doses of prednisone, 30 milligrams a day, which I know adults that take 10 milligrams a day, and he's a 23-pound puppy. And so basically for the next 5 months, we tapered down his prednisone dose, which, those types of hormones, and we talked about hormones, when we came in, and I think that those types of hormones didn't help his situation a whole lot because he had just gotten neutered, and all of this came into play. So through this, he didn't get kind of the socialization that he needed because, the Coxie, the Giardia, live kind of up in the hills a little bit, so there's not a whole lot of dogs in yards and areas for people to play with. And what kind of grew to happen was, I don't think that he had a whole lot of socialization with older dogs that were willing to put the pressure on him, as you would say. And he was kind of a favorite at the shelter. He was scheduled for termination 6 times or so, and the shelter people kept bringing him into the office and kind of moving him to the back of the line because he was a puppy and everybody loved him.
Well, that's good.
And his name at the shelter was Nibbles, which to me was hilarious. But so they always brought him in, and he got a ton of love, but he didn't have any of that, anyone there dominating him saying, no, this is how you behave as a puppy, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so first time we had our introduction with the 9-year-old who, like I said, she's about a 70-pound lab shepherd mix. He was really, all over here trying to play, and she just kind of not having a whole lot of it. And so, the dynamic was one of he was a lot of puppy, and she wanted to kind of hang out with the adults. And so over the course of the last 9 to 10 months, we've had incidences of him lashing out at her finishing the fight. Mm-hmm. We've had blood drawn. We've had, just not situations that, we've been there. It's happened when we haven't been there. We went out of town for a week, and, the pet sitter called me up going, oh, my God, Steve just attacked Janie, and it went on for a minute and a half, and I couldn't break it up.
And that's when you called me, I think, right?
That was when I called Katie from Angel City, and I said, I've got to do something because I'm stressed. My wife is stressed. The dogs are stressed. My son is stressed. This isn't a happy relationship for anybody. Mm-hmm. And I said, at the end of the day, Janie's been here for 9 years. She's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. My fear, not that I think that anything would happen between Steve and my son, but that something happens between the dogs.
Right.
And he was going to get involved. Because, he's 2. He's walking. He's into everything. So that was our fear. And I called Katie, and she said, obviously I understand, and there's such an amazing group of people at Angel City. So
yes,
I will throw that out to your listeners if they're an amazing group. Mm-hmm. But she said, do yourself a favor, call this guy Brandon. We've had some great success, and he's really, really amazing. And she said, just do yourself a favor. So we talked. My wife travels a little bit, so
she was
out of town for a couple. Go ahead.
And that's interesting because you're a trainer. So how did that feel? Because I've talked to you and you've got a different kind of personality, and this is who we're trying to reach too, because I want to make sure that our listeners understand that there's nothing wrong with training. But
no, everything is a tool.
Right.
And some people are tools. But everything is a tool out there for your toolbox. And, training is fine in appropriate situations. I was dealing with an aggression problem. Mm-hmm. I couldn't train that out of him. It's not something that I can, throw a cookie in front of him and say, don't attack that dog over there, because that was the other element of it. Now we started on walks. And, anytime there was another dog on a deck, there was a dog on the street, there was a dog barking down below us, he was so reactive that he actually started displacing his anger onto leaves, onto the leash, onto Janie, and all these other things. And that's, I tried everything that I knew. Mm-hmm. And I tried gentle leaders. I tried gentle leader, the Premier harnesses. I tried choke chains. I tried treats. Clickers, mm-hmm. the whole deal. Mm-hmm. And nothing broke through when the frenzy started. When he became the berserker, there was nothing that was stopping him. And I got angry, the dogs got angry, I got frustrated. My wife couldn't walk the 2 of them, and here I am trying to walk 2 dogs in a stroller and, try to act like I know what I'm doing because I had been the guy who's training dogs for 15 years. So, like I told you, there's nothing in my DNA that says I know everything about dogs, and one of the biggest things to admit is that, there's maybe something else out there that I don't know. Right. And so that was why it was so important for us to come down and see you. So I talked to my wife about it, and she said, well, this is basically kind of the last gasp, because if we can't make this work, we're back to a single dog household for a while, because this was a lot of emotion for almost a year put into him, and God, we love him to death. But it's at that point, it was like, I can't risk my family, and I can't risk liability, and I can't risk, things that are going on in our lives, for this if I can't make it work. So
you're saying on the ride down there, you guys have pretty much kind of like made up your mind that maybe this is it, huh?
Well, I was preparing myself for that mm-hmm. because I knew this was a team effort, and I knew we both had to be on board. Right. And, like I was saying, my wife works a lot. She works during the day. I work at night. And so essentially we're kind of like tag team parents with the baby and whatnot. So it's hard for everybody to stay on the same page when you're kind of doing things like, oh, what happened today? And you're kind of handing off the baton and going, okay, you take care of the 2 dogs and the baby. I'm going to go to work now.
Right.
So I knew that this was going to have to be a team effort. And so it was important for me to at least kind of set in my brain that this may be something that's going to happen, is that he may have to, go back to Angel City. It's the last thing I want to happen with him, but for the sake of my family, it may have to. Right. So we came down, we dropped him off this past Saturday. So, I mean, we're looking at, 5 days? We dropped him off on Saturday about 9:30ish, picked him up about 3:30. Picked him up. We showed up at your place at 3:30. We left after 6. Yeah. And it was amazing. And to hear my wife say, oh, my God, I didn't think this could happen. That's not the same dog. Every time I see this on TV, I think it's creative editing, but he's a different dog.
Right.
And then to have you say to her, well, guess what? You're going to go do it. And to walk him outside and see him walking past, a dog that's, giving him the eye, chained to a fence, and Steve walking right past him, and then on the next pass actually walking into the street to avoid the dog. And then to have the same thing happen with my wife when she was walking him blew my mind. Right. And it was amazing, and it blew her mind. And it was one of the most transformative things that I've ever seen as a trainer, as a person, and especially when it's that personal to you, to know how he is normally, and I say normally as far as, what he'd done in the past, to see what is potential so quickly, which to me, that says to me that's your real nature. All this other stuff is just fluff.
Absolutely.
This is your brain not knowing how to deal with things. Since we brought him home, we're still doing walks one at a time. Right. We've had to kind of shift their pack mentality, so they are the pack, and their relationship is growing, which is great to see. When we brought them back, they were all just kind of licky and nuzzle, and whose head's over the top and who's licking somebody under the mouth, and which is more than they normally do. But his overall franticness has diminished in such a way. When he came from the shelter, he was scared of hoses, scared of brooms, very, very, kind of tentative about stuff. The first time
very reactive. And,
absolutely.
And that was the problem with your wife. And I want to tell our listeners that because there's a lot of women that are listening. I asked your wife, she was telling me, oh, we got these problems, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what do you want from him? What's going to make your life easier? Because this was interfering with you guys' relationship, and the baby. And so it's really important for people to understand how your wife felt. I'm sorry that she can't be here, but I want you to tell our listeners, how does your wife feel?
Like I said, it was transformative for her to go, oh my God, we can do this. That was huge. Because, I knew it had to be a we can do this. It's not an I can do this or you can do this. It's a we can do this. And that was what was so great was, I think when, obviously we carry so much emotion in everything that we do. And so when you go into a situation where your past history has been, oh my God, I don't want to see another dog on this walk because I don't know if I can handle it. I can't walk both dogs. You start throwing that vibe out and the dogs start going, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Great. Without saying a word.
Great.
So your energy starts kicking up. And so I think the aspect of just being able to go, no, I can do this. Knock it off.
Right.
That carries so much weight.
And your neighbor, you were having a situation with.
Yeah, we've got a neighbor down the street who's got similar issues, and literally within days, like, yep, I already sent over a contact email to Brandon. Okay. So, it's one of those things where, one of my best friends from high school, I grew up in the Midwest, lives directly across from me, and we've been scared to introduce our dogs because, she's had issues in the past, she'd been attacked in the past. And so, it's one of those things where, God, it'd be so great if we could have my neighbor, my good friend, come over and bring his dog, and all three of them could go running around, or we could go over there. But we were too afraid to. And after seeing your videos, and the one thing that will stay with me the whole time is you going, he's just a good time Charlie.
Yeah.
Because he loves playing with the other dogs.
Yeah. That's it.
But there was so much.
And I want to say this because this is very important too. When he walked in my place, soon as he walked in, I told you right away, I know this mind. The reactivity of his nervous system is high. And there's a certain thing that you have to do with this dog, even before we took him back. This is part of the evaluation. And so I am so happy that your wife and you are happy and that the family is working, getting this thing done. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have you on the show to send this message across and not have your ego involved and understand that you have been doing this for 15 years. But this is a specialist. This is something that's different. You know?
Absolutely.
We cannot use the same formula that we have been using since the beginning of dogs to deal with issues that are related to aggression.
Yep.
And so I'm so happy. Thank you very much, Jeff. And that's all I can say to you, man. I mean, and keep it up. I also want to see him, too. I've only seen him for a few hours. I'd like for him to come back to daycare. Okay?
Absolutely. And he may be bringing his sister.
All right. That sounds good. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Our next caller, Kathy Chang. Kathy, are you there?
I am here.
I'm so happy to hear from you, Kathy, because you are a warrior. I've been hearing about you. You know, in fact, I think you're the one who first said that we were Fouché Wade. Is that it?
Actually, I stole that from the people at Angel City Pitbull.
Oh,
they said
God.
they've been Fouché'd.
Kathy, I want you to tell our listeners what's been happening. Tell me your story. I mean, this is interesting.
Okay. You know, I'm sitting here trying to be very quiet, but my head is like nodding and my thumbs are going, yes, thumbs up. I'm listening to these to Jeff and Maya tell their stories, and mine's very similar as far as with Gilbert. Now I have two other dogs.
You have three pit bulls.
Pardon me?
3 pit bulls.
Well, Suki is kind of a mix. I just call her a diva.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, Pat is a pit mix, and then Gilbert's a pit. And I pulled Gilbert from a shelter, and I, too, had the intention of fostering and adopting him out. But when I began walking him, that's when we realized, we've got some issues. And it was, you know, like I said, very similar to what Jeff and Maya experienced. He would even lunge at some men.
Mm-hmm.
And the lunging and the barking and the spinning and the twirling and
you got it all.
It was just very difficult to control.
Right.
So, you know, I had worked with a behaviorist with Suki, my first dog, and so I called him and he suggested using a prong collar and walking Gilbert back and forth in front of dogs, kind of minding the threshold, meaning when you start to see him react, pull back a little bit. And he would eventually tire out, which he did, but when he got energy back, he was back to reacting. So I thought, well, that's probably not the way to go. And then I found another behaviorist and went through his program, and it was really more about leash corrections, again, maintaining threshold, and then he eventually ended up using the e-collar.
The electronic collar. That's a shock collar.
Yes.
To those who don't know. Yeah.
And it seemed to work at first, and when I started walking him, I could tell he was escalating after a few days, and he turned and grabbed the leash. And I reached down and took the collar off. I said, this is not how this should go. And so I think I probably came home and cried. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I found you on YouTube. You were doing a segment on, I want to say, Critter.
Oh, Critter Crusades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I listened to you talk. You also showed a video of, I think it was a German Shepherd dominating a pit bull.
Oh, that's my heart.
And I was watching the dogs, and I thought, this guy knows dogs. This is what I was looking for. And so I called you, we chatted, I brought Gilbert, you know, and I went shopping, came back 3 or 4 hours later, and saw the videos, and I didn't know because he was fine with my 2 dogs, but I didn't know if he'd be okay with other dogs because on the leash, it didn't look like it.
Sure.
So I saw the videos of him playing, and he's a submissive dog.
Yes, he is.
And I didn't know that. And so then you went out front, walked him past other dogs, and I was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even said, I know he knows that dog from playing. And he said, okay, go get the other pit bull that we have. And Leroy brought another dog out.
Right.
And walked past, and it was, there was no reaction. And then you handed him off to me. I walked by, there was no reaction. And I was, it was like, oh my God, it changed dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But my story didn't end there, because when I got back, things seemed to be okay, at first,
mm-hmm.
but then I noticed he started reacting again. And I brought him to you a couple of times just for play dates, socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And when I brought him to you the second time, I think I told you, he's still reacting, and you were shocked.
Mm-hmm.
You said, wait a minute, go get him. And so we brought him out front, and you had me walk him past the dog, and he started reacting. I tried to correct him. I couldn't get him under control.
Right.
And then you had Leroy take him, and he walked right behind Leroy, just walked past the dog.
Right.
And then I took Gilbert back, and I tried it, and he was reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to correct him. And I will never forget these words that you said. As I was trying to correct Gilbert, you said, he doesn't believe you. I don't believe you.
Right.
And I was faced with, it's not my dog, it's me.
Right.
So that's
say
when I
that
had
again to our listeners. This is so
I'm
important.
sorry?
Say that again to our listeners. This is so important.
It wasn't the dog, it was me.
Yes.
There were no more excuses. There were no more, I didn't time the correction right. Oh, it's because that dog was, eyeing him a certain way or whatever. There were no excuses because it was black and white.
Mm-hmm. And so you went
drive
home. You went home. Tell this story.
The drive home, soul searching, laid in bed that night. Okay, what is it? And I woke up the next morning, and I remember getting out of bed saying, this is my day.
Right.
I took the leash, out we went, and sure enough, as soon as I turned a corner, here comes a woman with a dog. And I realized my aha moment, my issue was I was more concerned, because around the house,
mm-hmm.
totally have them under control. But out in public, to correct Gilbert with the intensity that was required, the energy that was required to get him to submit to me, I was more concerned what people might think about that.
Now I want to stop you right there. The energy that we're
uh-huh.
talking about is the energy inside of you.
Correct.
That's what we're talking about, not physical corrections or anything like that.
No.
Great.
No.
Okay.
No physical corrections. It's the having the mental control over your dog.
So go ahead.
So, I had told myself when I stepped out the door that day, this was it. It was all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to forget about the person, forget
mm-hmm.
about their dog. And as soon as I saw Gilbert start to, raise up a little bit, I addressed the situation. He submitted, and we took off. And I'm sure I called you after that.
Yes,
but
I remember that call.
From that moment on, and I remember talking to you, you said, that's great, now you just need to keep building confidence. Because what that did for me was it made me really feel and really realize I can do this and he will respond.
Yes.
And I don't have to worry about anybody else because the treat training, the focus, the look at me, the things that I was being told and researched wasn't working.
It's not important.
Yes.
And I want to stop you there because, and hold that thought, but, our biggest fear that humans have that own dogs, or what our neighbors think.
Mm-hmm.
And that interferes with the relationship between you and the dog, because you're inserting someone who has nothing to do with the relationship between you and your dog.
Right.
So you had to get over that, what these people
Correct.
think about you. Because later when they see you, they're going to say, hey, can you tell us what you've been thinking so we can do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's what will end up happening. So you had that aha moment. You realized, man, this is me. And you got it under
Right.
control. And then what happened?
Right.
You've got other dogs.
Exactly. And I continued walking Gilbert separate for a little while, but then I decided I'm ready. I grabbed the 3, off we went. We've been pack walking ever since. What happened because of that, the 3 dogs were never really a pack before I started working with you.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is they begin to, you can almost feel it, like they just kind of,
Right.
there's like a sigh of relaxation, like Maya talked about,
Yes.
where the pressure is just off of them and they become settled and they become quiet and they become calm because they know for certain who's in charge.
Exactly. How wonderful is that?
Oh my God, I thank you every day. Every morning I get up and walk these dogs. And people, in the neighborhood have seen the progression.
What are they saying?
So, how did you do that? So yes, your name has been given out, and we need to bring the Fouché way to the street.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. That's what this show is about, Kathy. I want you on. I want people on to talk to our listeners, to let them know that, dogs are being destroyed for these things, and we can help them. It's not so much me. I want to help people to do this, to understand this, so that you don't turn your dogs into the shelter, so that we don't give up on them. But it's got to be something that's quick. It's got to happen right away. And you said something really important. I want you to say it again. It's how I made you understand what you need to be doing and how Gilbert thinks. Because you're looking at them now from a different level. A different level, totally. Can you explain that? What's happening?
Yes, and because people talk about, affection, or, giving affection to their dogs, and, I've been doing this for several months now, and what happens is when you become their leader and they actually see that and feel it, there is such a deep, deep connection that you have with your dog that exceeds any kind of the lovey-dovey, fluffy affection stuff that we as humans tend to try to get from our dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really want to tell people is you're not giving anything up. You're getting something better.
Right. Wow. I couldn't.
And it's organic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's natural. There's no pulling. There's no correcting. There's no shocking. There's no screaming. There's no yelling. And what I've noticed for me, too, personally, is things for me, as I've become more confident, things are done even more quietly and more subtly.
Mm-hmm. Now you're
things
reaching.
Things like a look.
Yeah.
Things like body language.
Yes.
And that's the connection I'm talking about, when you really you're having conversations all the time, but you're not saying anything.
You are paying attention to your dogs. You're looking at them
Right.
from the concept of nature, not training. You're not disconnecting anymore.
Right.
This is fantastic.
It is.
And now you are actually venturing out to start trying to help other people. You've got some calls now. People have asked you, hey, tell us about this thing. And you've been able to explain to them, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've helped actually one neighbor on our street. We've been walking the dogs together off and on, and relayed what I have learned, and it's helped him a lot, actually, with some issues with his dog. I'm also really want to pay it forward, so I'm going to begin fostering.
That's great.
But really fostering this time and adopting the dog because I've already got 3.
That's so great, Kathy. I am so happy that we talked today. I want you to keep up the good work, and we will connect more. And I'm just happy that you told our listeners, and I want to continue with this. So
thank you.
I want to thank all of our callers that called in today, and I hope to be talking to you soon. And tune in tomorrow next Thursday to the Fouché Way radio show, and we will discuss more aggression. So thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Also, don't forget, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. You can download on iTunes, and don't forget the nonprofit button. Let's donate. Let's help the people who don't have the money to help their dogs. Thank you.
You're listening to Fouché Way with Brandon Fouché, right here on LA Talk Radio.